What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. We are live once again. It's a Fight Day live stream today to break down the very tepid card that is UFC Vegas 64. It's headlined by an interesting strawweight contest between Amanda Lemos, a powerful finisher, and Marina Rodriguez, somebody who's been seemingly on the cusp of a title shot now for some time. But guys, I'm excited to talk about these fights because I have a lot of betting angles for this card. I don't always like to target these fight night cards. Sometimes I like to, pick my spots a little bit more, look for the pay-per-views, look for some of these bigger events. But I also try and find anytime there's value. And I found a lot of spots that I felt like we could exploit some value on this card. I think that these Apex cards tend to open up some finishes, tend to open up some mismatches in terms of level of skill and competition and preparedness. And that's what we're looking to dig into on this week's fight card. So guys, thank you all for being here very much. I always say it, sharpest chat in the game. We already got some legends in here with us. MMA Triple J, great capper, Moyes Audio, king of the carousel. So appreciate everybody being here. Plays and fades, my man Gordo as well. So guys, a lot of people doing great content in this space, a lot of great follows on Twitter. Make sure that you give those guys that love and support. But we've got a fight card to break down. I don't want to waste any time. So let's get into this first fight of the night. Seems to be everybody's favorite fight to discuss for some reason. We've got Tamires Vidal making her UFC debut here. And listen, Tamires Vidal has not put a lot of great footage together so far in her young career. She is not a very experienced fighter at 6-1, but Ramona Pascal is not a very experienced fighter at 6-4. That being said, she's got some experience now in the UFC. Seems like that's what people are banking on in this spot. You look at Tapology predictions. A lot of people are predicting Vidal to win. You look at MMA Twitter and, kind of the gambling circles on Twitter. Seems like a lot of people are on the Pascal side here. Obvious why. It's a low-level women's MMA fight. She's the plus money underdog. Looks like the line may even flip at this stage, if not close an outright pick 'em between these two fighters. But what stood out to me is that, the best thing about Ramona Pascal's game is her aggression. She's willing to come forward. She's willing to throw those knees to the body. And I think that, that's really what she brings to the table. She's very hittable. She's absorbed a lot of damage in these UFC fights. And I think that the other thing that stood out to me about the record of Vidal is that while she hasn't put together a great resume, she got beat up pretty bad by Aylin Perez. It wasn't that decisive a win in her, I think it was an LFA contest that she had when she stepped up to the higher level, but she was able to get that heel hook from the bottom. And what it did tell me is that she's got, some jiu-jitsu sophistication. She's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu brown belt. Seems like that's her primary training objective. She's done some competitive grappling in Brazil. Is Ramona Pascal really going to be able to hold up to that? I'm not sure. She does train at Syndicate MMA. She's been getting good looks training in the United States, but I'm not positive that Ramona Pascal's grappling is really head and shoulders above her. Now, Ramona is the one that missed weight for this contest. So more than likely you see Ramona a little bit stronger, a little bit more physical, maybe able to get on top. But I think that if she's on top in this fight, like a lot of people are expecting, she could be vulnerable to getting submitted here by somebody who's, seemingly a competent guard player, if nothing else, that you could say really positive. So I wouldn't advocate going out and necessarily laying a lot of chalk on Tamires Vidal. There's a ton of question marks, but it does seem like the sportsbook is going to need Tamires Vidal. They opened her up a minus 235 favorite in this spot. It's been bet all the way the other way. And for me, the sportsbook oftentimes has more information than we do. So if they're saying she's a 70% favorite in the spot, maybe they had an inkling that Ramona Pascal was going to miss weight. Maybe they had some of that information before we did. So that's the only thing that gives me some pause, some trepidation here. But I saw a plus 500 on Tamires Vidal by submission. And I did take a small poke on that, like a quarter unit shot. And just because I think that that's her, way to finish. I think that's her way to win the fight. I think it's probably going to be a greasy split decision if it goes to the cards, or Vidal is going to find that submission. I think for Ramona Pascal, her best path to victory is a knockout here. Tamires Vidal doesn't seem like she takes damage all that well. Ramona is a big girl. She's coming in a little bit over that limit, and she hurt her last opponent to the body with a big knee. So I think that that's her path to victory here. But for me, pretty low-level fight, not something I'm interested in laying a lot of chalk on or giving that much time, effort, and energy to in terms of brain power, but I think that Tamira's Vidal may actually be the side here just because of how popular the underdog is. But in whatever case, we can move along here to the next fight. Man, we got a whole bevy of killers out here. Solar Warden, I don't think he's ever been in my comments before, so welcome aboard, brother. And 2 cents, a lot of the regulars here. So, guys, truly appreciate you being here. It's a pleasure to talk fights with you guys. Bunch of killers in the room today, and just want to shout out my man Blake Perry, Blake MMA 170. It was his birthday over the weekend. Guy's an absolute savage. Had one of the fights of the year in the Bellator banner, getting that submission win, big comeback fashion. Beat one of the Cooper brothers. So absolutely a stud there. Shout out my man Blake Perry. Wanted to give him that love. I'm wearing the t-shirt in his honor today. Next fight, guys, we got Jake Hadley taking on Carlos Candelario at 125 pounds here. Almost, right? Carlos missed weight again. Oh, brutal. But Carlos is a tough guy, right? I thought that Tatsuro Taira was going to wrap him up and submit him in the first round, as he had done to many opponents regionally. I thought that he could hurt him on the feet, which ended up happening, but he was able to recover, man. The guy's tough. You know, he got dropped in that fight. He got summarily out-grappled, I would say. But he did a lot of things well. He was able to get some takedowns. He was able to, surprise Taira. I don't think Taira expected him to come out, being the first one to shoot, trying to get in on those legs. And he took, a nice takedown attempt, got on top of him. And Taira was able to show that composure, get back on top. Taira was a max bet, for me against him in that fight. And Taira was a max bet for me the last time that he fought as well. I really like the kid. I'm really high on him. I think his grappling translates. I think he's got pretty good striking and good timing on the feet as well. So I've liked everything I've seen from Tatsuro Taira. And the fact that Carlos Candelario was able to survive a lot longer than somebody like CJ Vergara, who is another guy who you'd give that label of a gritty fighter and a tough fighter and a guy who wants to stay in there, but maybe doesn't have the same grappling chops, right? Candelario, he did a good job with the hand fight. He did a good job, staying basic. But there was a few times in that fight he was eligible to be stopped due to TKO. He was getting hammered with elbows. Taira was opening up with huge ground and pound shots, and he did a good job to stay busy, stay moving, put hands to knees, try and get back up to his feet. But it did show me that Carlos Candelario can be taken down. He can be rode out from the top position. He can be opened up on with ground and pound shots. And when I look at Jake Hadley's game, I do think there's some susceptibilities. He's been taken down. He's been controlled. I thought that the Alan Nascimento fight was a horrible matchup for him to come into the UFC. I don't think that I ended up getting to the window with Alan Nascimento, but I do remember thinking, man, this is a tough one for Hadley right off the rip. Pretty talented and experienced black belt with a lot of scrambling ability and who was very content to have a grappling-based fight. I think Candelario is very content to have a grappling-based fight as well, but I just think that the physicality difference from Hadley may be what separates him. He may be able to get on top here. It's the problem for me that he missed weight as well. For Candelario, if I was expecting him to have made some improvements, to be more professional, have a little bit of a better gas tank, have a little bit of a better game plan, missing weight for me is like a big chip away at that. It tells me maybe he's not really about this life, whereas Jake Hadley, he's missed weight in the past, makes weight for this contest. Seems like it's really important to him, back against the wall. Talked a lot of stuff. Dana stuck his neck out for him. He needs a big win, and I think he's going to be able to get it. I think he might surprise people, though, getting it with ground and pound via TKO. Maybe he gets that sub, but I just think that, Candelario showed to be really stingy in his last fight. I think he's tough to submit. I think that if you open up on this guy with ground and pound, you can maybe cut him, get some, good optics and finish the fight, close out the show. So I think Jake Hadley, round 3, that's kind of what I'm envisioning here. He might take over the fight as it goes on, use that physicality, get on top, and open up with some ground and pound strikes. So the next fight, guys, we are seeing Johnny Munoz Jr. fresh off a brutal knockout, unfortunately, in the very first round against Tony Gravely. Tony's got a lot of power. He's a very dangerous guy, tends to slow down over the course of the contest. I thought Johnny Munoz might have a chance to come on strong in that fight, to bring the pace to him, to out-grapple Tony Gravely. And Tony Gravely's been submitted on a number of occasions, so it seemed like a very viable path to victory. But when you get blasted out in the first couple of seconds, you have no chance, to bring your game to bear. So tough break for him there. I think he's a pretty tough guy. I think he's a pretty solid fighter, but coming off a knockout loss Do I want to back him as a minus 250 favorite? No, I have no interest in doing that. I'm going to let this fight go completely. No bets for me here. If anything, it would be a dog or pass situation. But the problem I had is I'm not sure what's very dynamic about Ludovic Shilinian. You look at his record, a lot of fights that go to close competitive decisions. Does seem like he is able to defend some takedowns, to make it tricky for guys, to try and use some of his own counter grappling. But I really don't, necessarily rate Shilinian on a high level. I don't rate Munoz on a level that's extremely above Shilinian. I think in terms of pure grappling, I would have to favor Munoz in this spot. In terms of the striking, though, I think it's a bit of a crapshoot. I'm not really expecting much from either guy. I think both of them are a work in progress on the feet. So this for me is a complete pass fight. But I understand why people are taking shots on the underdog here, just because you're getting a guy in, a pretty tough spot where he might be a little bit more trepidatious about coming forward, about being aggressive, and if you're Johnny Munoz, you got to get that grappling game going. That's where his largest source of confidence is. That's where his biggest ability to finish the fight will be. And I think if he's able to get that grappling going early and often, catch him in dry positions, he could get that submission finish. I do think he is that lethal on the ground. If that doesn't materialize, I think we're looking at another split decision territory. Neither guy runs away with it, turns into maybe a little bit of a lower volume kickboxing match. So no interest for me from a betting perspective. Now, guys, we got the next fight of the night. Want to shout out the people in the chat. My man Solar Warden says he'll hit the like button. I hope you guys will all consider doing the same. Appreciate you guys being here. We got 48 people rocking with us live on a fight day. So, guys, cheers to each and every one of you. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee, and we're going to keep it rocking and rolling. Appreciate you guys. Next up, Jinyu Frey taking on Viana at 115 pounds. And, I got to give a lot of credit to Jinyu Frey. I think she's made serious improvements over the course of her UFC career. I've credited this in other places. I think Mindset Mike does tremendous work with these athletes. He's a sports psychologist, and I think he has an FBI background, a couple things like that, man. And the guy just brings out a different side of athletes. He gets them to compete hard. He gets them to be a little bit more assertive, to bring a little bit more of their skills to bear. And I can just speak from personal experience. He made a program called Wrestling Mindset. I couldn't win matches in the third period. And then I listened to their stuff. I got it through my thick skull, and I started to win some matches in the third period. I started to come back in matches. It is psychological patterns that people have that cause them to lose certain ways. And I think that, man, it's a powerful tool. I think we've seen Jinyu Frey be more assertive. But even with all that being said, right, even with all the compliments out the way, Jinyu Frey has been outlanded in every UFC fight that she has had so far. She's won some, she's lost some. She's been outlanded in every UFC fight. She was also submitted by Kay Hansen. Not a great look, in my opinion. I don't think Kay Hansen's a bad grappler by any means, but Jinyu Frey, at that stage of her career, at that level of experience, should not be getting submitted in that spot. She just shouldn't, point blank. Now, Viana is no perfect fighter, right? I bet a lot of money on Tabitha Ricci the last time out. And the reason being was I felt like Viana was not going to be able to submit her from the guard. And I felt like Viana was going to be committed to trying to submit her from the guard. So I knew that we would get, some sketchy moments where there would be armbar attempts, but I just felt like Tabitha Ricci, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, very well versed on the ground. I thought that she was going to handle that spot accordingly. Now, Jinyu Frey, on the other hand, I'm not certain that she can survive those positions, right? You look at Jinyu Frey's record, she's been taken down on a number of occasions in the UFC by non-wrestling archetypes, by some jiu-jitsu players, by some, just generalists. And now she's going to be in a position where I think that she could win the fight if it goes to the scorecards, but I don't fear, Jinyu Frey winning this fight inside the distance at a very high clip. She isn't very dangerous historically. She's not passing to a lot of dominant positions. She's not attempting a high rate of submissions. Now, Viana, on the other hand, I do think that she is liable to finish this fight. I think that she has the submission upside. I think that she has the knockout upside, like my man Moy's Audio is pointing out here. Now, I don't think that she has no chin, but I do think at 37 years of age, when she's already been rocked, when she's already been wobbled in previous fights, when she's getting busted up a little bit on the feet at times by Vanessa Demopoulos, I do have to ask the question, Polyana Viana, she's known for her grappling chops. Right now, if you just look historically, her sub one has been the same as her money line. Like just as a proposition, if you've bet sub one, you've gotten the same results as if you bet her money line, because that's the only way she's won so far in the UFC. But I don't think she's limited to that. You look at her regional career. She did fight Amanda Ribas regionally, and Amanda Ribas is a UFC credentialed fighter. She only has one other loss by knockout, and it's to the headliner of the show tonight. And she got knocked out by Polyana Viana. Brutal finish if you guys go back and watch that. So I do think that Polyana Viana has real power in her hands for women's MMA. I don't think it's anything crazy. I don't think it's anything that's going to light the world on fire. But against somebody that has been hurt and rocked before, who is a little bit older traditionally for the division, who is a former atomweight, I do think Jinh Yu Frey's put on some good weight. But I think that this is still Polyana Viana, who's a much longer, bigger fighter. I think that Polyana Viana can land her straight punches from the outside. I think she can mix in the kicks. I think she can hurt her with strikes, and I think she could submit her. So I bet Polyana Viana by submission at plus 350 when it opened on Bet Online. And I bet Polyana Viana by sub in round one at plus 700, I believe. I bet Polyana Viana inside the distance at plus 275. And I bet the fight not to go to decision. If you look historically, betting fights not to go to decision in Polyana Viana fights, very profitable angle. It's normally plus money, and it normally doesn't go the distance no matter who wins. She got submitted once in the first round by armbar herself. So it's not like I'm saying Polyana Viana is the second coming. I'm not saying she's that great a fighter. Frankly, I wouldn't trust Polyana Viana with a chalk money line bet in this spot. But I do think she's going to win the fight. I think she's going to get this done by submission. So I am going to be rooting for a Polyana Viana finisher. I'm going to be rooting for some violence. And I think that maybe she could get it done for the kid. So next up, guys, we got a very fun one here. Mario Batista taking on Benito Lopez. And, man, Benito Lopez coming in here. Misses weight. Don't like to see that. Said that he worked with the UFC PI, too. How many guys working with the PI have missed weight now? That list is getting a little too long for my liking. I think that this is a tough spot. This is a very tough spot for Benito Lopez to come back to. When you've been out of the octagon, when you haven't had that, consistent experience, consistent competition, it's going to be a big adjustment. He talked about it in his interviews. Like, it hurt him getting back in shape. Like, he felt like this was going to be a really tough, opportunity to try and, work his body back into shape and stuff. And his body was like hurting and not wanting to go there. All that's a horrible sign for me when you're coming back against Mario Batista, who brings a pretty high pace rate, pretty explosive guy. And I think that he's learned in recent fights, he's not going to make it as a stand-up merchant in this division. He's just not. He's a little bit awkward in the stand-up. He can get hurt at times. He can get caught looking. And I think that his grappling is pretty darn good. He got submitted by Corey Sandhagen. I feel like that was a fight where he just got overwhelmed by the pressure of the moment. He was actually having some success, got out of a couple of key positions, looked like he was trying to come on there and just got caught, in a weird inverted triangle series. So I think that Corey Sandhagen proved that he was a tricky grappler there. And you see Corey Sandhagen in most of his fights as a transition grappler. He's fantastic. I think that, I do think Gold Caps brings up a good point that Yoder was a similar fight, but I think Yoder is just plain bad. I think she's plain bad. I don't think she's very dangerous at all. I don't think she's a very good submission threat. Against Angela Hill, she couldn't even sniff a takedown when Angela Hill was getting herself taken down, like falling flat to her back. Like, Ashley Yoder, for me, is on the forever no bet list after that atrocity. And I do think that Polyana Viana is a level above, both in terms of potential star power and in terms of her actual skills, both as a grappler and a striker. Now, back to this fight, though. Mario Batista, what really impressed me about his last fight, Brian Kelleher, he's no slouch, guys. He's not a punk. He's there to really fight and try and get the win. And he got blown through in that fight. Batista was bringing a lot of pressure. He was exerting a lot of grappling pressure, as well as landing some strikes on the feet that Brian wasn't liking, finding some tight uppercuts, and he was mixing it all together very well. When he got on top, never gave him a break, never gave him a pause, just kept exerting pressure, getting to dominant positions, and eventually Brian just needed to check out of there. So I think that, Benito Lopez, he might be asking himself 2 minutes into this fight, what the hell am I still doing here? Why did I decide to come back here? I do root for the guy to have some success. I want him to have a good first round. I want him to get that feel back under him. But I think the UFC is basically saying, if you're going to come back, there's no easy fights in this division for you. There's no gifts. There's no cupcakes. If you actually watch his historical matchmaking in the UFC, I thought that he's fought an incredibly soft resume overall. And I felt like he should have lost a lot of the fights that he was given decision wins. Like, maybe I'm being biased, but I just went back and watched before I had any opinion on this fight, before I was going to bet anything. And I just was like surprised that they were giving him these decisions. He does a lot of kicks. He does a lot of flashy stuff. I'm not sure how much of it landed. I'm not sure how much of it was effective. I do think that what he does well, he's got a good body kick. He throws a nice left body kick. If his skills match up to what we saw on tape, a few years ago, he does have a dynamic flying knee, which we have seen, Batista has been on the receiving end and he's dealt those out before, the flying knee knockout. So I think that that's something to watch out for here in the early going. Benito Lopez could be live if he just tries to empty the tank. But I have a feeling that, cardio is going to play a big role here. I think that Benito is going to slow down in this fight. I think that the failed weight cut's not going to help him. I think the 3 years away is not going to help him. I think the nerves that are likely to come with that will not help him in this spot. And so I feel like this is going to be Mario Batista round 2 via TKO or submission. And I did bet the submission prop for a small amount, and I bet the round 2 prop as well. So really rooting for Batista to get it done in the later portions of this fight, but I think that Batista is the side here. I did not like what I saw from Benito Lopez in the lead up, but wishing him luck as he returns to the octagon after a more than 1,000 day layoff. So best of luck to Benito Lopez there, the recent father. Now, Miranda Maverick taking on Shayna Young here. My word. I was planning on making a massive bet on Miranda Maverick the first time that they had booked this fight, but I don't like rebooked fights. Why do I not like rebooked fights? The sportsbook gets the added benefit of seeing all the information, where everybody's going to bet, what they're going to bet, how much, when they're going to bet it, at what limit. That's a lot of information for them to make better lines, to make it harder to make money, to make it harder to say yes to a bet that you wanted to take, to make it harder to say no to an underdog play, right? You look at the opener here. It was the fakest, softest opener of all time. They opened to minus 300. It was gone in 10 seconds. It was minus 500, like it was around close the last time. Now we're seeing minus 700s. We're seeing, very high juice distinction for Miranda Maverick. And the reason being is pretty understandable. There is a past fight between these two where Miranda Maverick gets the submission in round 1. In the time that has elapsed since then, you've seen Shayna Young become much more tough. She's a tougher out. She brings more to the table. She looks a little bit more physical. But I don't believe that she has evolved her skills as much as Miranda Maverick. Miranda Maverick has shown that, her striking still a work in progress. That's clear. But she can throw some strikes that have effect. She can, bust up somebody's nose. She can land effective shots with some power because she's got that farm girl strength. She's got those big muscles. But she is an effective ground player. She is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, I believe. She is also very smart. She comes out there with a solid approach for most of her fights. And I think we've been seeing more poise, more composure in recent performances. I bet a lot on Miranda by sub last time out. It was a better number that time against Sabina Mazo. But I think we're going to see the same thing here. I do think she's going to get the submission once again. I think Miranda has learned that she can use her ground and pound to set up these submission opportunities. I think Shayna Young, after her experience with Stephanie Egger, getting the fight stopped via TKO, she might be more willing to move, more willing to try and create a bunch of scrambles in this spot. And I have a feeling that that's going to get her neck snatched. And Miranda is just very strong. So when she gets a hold of the neck for that rear naked choke, I don't think she's giving it back. I think she is the more competent grappler here, and I think she's going to exert that pressure. I think she's going to find takedowns, and I do think Miranda's going to get the sub in the first 2 rounds here and start her ascent once again in this division. I think that arguably Miranda Maverick should only have 1 loss in the UFC, and it was to Erin Blanchfield, a better grappler than she is, and I don't think that the same could be said for Shanna Young. So until she's fighting people that are better grapplers than her, I think Miranda Maverick's going to continue to roll and get the job done with her grappling, with her strength, with her top pressure. And the tough weight cut for Shanna Young can't help, I don't imagine. Credit to her. She did a lot more than some other fighters to try and make the weight, and I think that deserves credit and respect. Cut her hair. So shout out to Shanna Young for being a real one, but I don't think that's going to be enough to get the job done, unfortunately. So, guys, next fight is the prelim headliner for whatever reason. God only knows. But what we've got is Darrick Minner taking on Shilinian Nurdianbek. Tried my best with the name. Listen, this is a tricky fight. Darrick Minner's a man after my own heart in some ways, right? I like to bring that pressure. I like to try and, cook people quick. I like to try and guillotine people, when I'm competing. So, man, how could I hate this guy? It's a man who has the same dreams as me. He wants to submit everybody in the first round. But I also think that, sometimes you got to be a little more strategic. Sometimes you got to be a little bit more clever. You got to bring a little bit more tact, a little bit more craft to what you do. And I don't know that we've seen that from Darrick Minner. I think that the Charles Rosa decision win is something of an illusion. I don't think that Charles really gives himself a chance to win MMA fights. He doesn't fight optimally at all. Doesn't seem to know what the criteria is to win rounds. So it's been tough recently to watch Charles Rosa performances. Nurdianbek, right? The problems, the question marks. He did put himself in some scary situations against TJ Brown, but I thought he was a deserved play against TJ Brown in that spot. Believe he's been an underdog in all of his UFC contests to this point, and now he's finally a favorite. So maybe it is time to play Darrick Minner. Maybe it is Darrick Minner's chance and his opportunity. But I do have some question marks still, I do have some question marks because I think that Shilinian proved to be very tough. I think you have to put him to sleep. I think you have to break his arm. I don't think you're just going to get a quick tap from this guy. I don't. So that leads me to, is Darrick Minner going to wrap him up in a perfect guillotine so tight that he goes to sleep? That's what I need. That's what I'd need to see from Darrick Minner here. I think that if you want to play Minner, you look for those finish props. You look for those sub in round 1, sub in round 2 props, in my opinion, because I do think that he's going to slow down considerably if he doesn't get the finish early. And, I don't think Shilinian has shown to be a great finisher to this point, but you never know when somebody is going to just smell blood in the water because their opponent's completely gassed. Most of these fights, Shilinian's been in there with guys that are trying to keep that cardio pace with him and make it a competitive dogfight. Obviously not a great look that he wasn't able to finish Soriano. I thought that was a gift, and I did bet him to finish in that fight. But I think that he's a guy who's getting more experience. He's getting more mature as time goes on, fighting once again here in the States. And I think that when you look at how the UFC books these fights, I think they do try and position certain guys. They try and position people to have breakout moments. You guys think they're trying to position Darrick Minner for a breakout moment in this Fight Pass, or excuse me, on the Fight Night prelim headliner? I don't think so, guys. I think they're probably trying to set up Shilinian to gas out Darrick Minner, come out with a TKO victory in the second or third round would be my guess here. But Darrick Minner's tough, so maybe he makes it to the scorecards. And maybe he gets that sub in round 1, man. I love a nice guillotine. If he gets the choke, what am I going to say? All I'm going to say is congrats to all you guys who backed Minner round 1 sub. I think that is the optimal way to back him. But yeah, I have to agree with Rogue Strummer here. Very sharp gentleman. I always say I got the sharpest chat in the game. Appreciate each and every one of you guys being here. Shilinian is a beast, guys. TJ Brown, better fighter than Minner, in my opinion. Tried to talk myself out of it, but always got back to him. And I tend to agree. Not that TJ Brown is necessarily a better fighter. I think that both of them suffer in the same way from a lack of brain thinking in rounds 2 and 3. But I also think that they bring that similar pressure. We've seen historically, he likes that front headlock game. He'll bring that pressure to talking about TJ Brown, he likes to attack from the front headlock. He wasn't able to get him out of there. And that's the bread and butter when you're looking at a guy like Darrick Minner. The one thing is, Shilinian likes to take the fight to the ground. He likes to be the one shooting takedowns. I think he'd be very wise to wait until round 2 to start shooting takedowns. He should make Darrick Minner try and shoot on him, in my opinion. But Darrick Minner, the other thing to his credit, he does come out swinging like a madman in round 1 because he wants to get the fight to the ground, because he wants to hurt you and wrap up a choke real quick. He comes out swinging wild hooks, and, nobody's above getting knocked out in the first round. So I think that that's the only thing he's got to worry about. Shilinian's got to mind his P's and Q's in round 1. Be smart. Take it 1 minute at a time in this fight. Try and win 1 minute at a time. And if he does that, I think he's going to end up finishing Darrick Minner before everything is said and done. Now we got the main card, folks. As we're kicking it over to the main card, just want to say, please get subscribed to the show if you haven't already. Next week, back at a normal time and a normal hour for a great card that deserves our attention, UFC 281. This week, last week, they didn't really give us much to work with, so was a struggle at times to dig into some of this. Next week is an absolute pleasure, and it's going to be for you guys as well, I'm sure. So I'm excited, guys. It should be a great night of fights, but just want to make sure you're all subscribed to the channel so you don't miss anything. I go live at all hours of the night. I go live during the day on fight day sometimes. So just want to make sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss anything that we're doing over here. Main card, Mark Madsen, Grant Dawson. This is a play that has stood out to me like a sore thumb all week. I haven't done it. I haven't done it yet. But if I get to a side on this fight, I can tell you with 100% certainty, I am rocking with my man Locker Room and taking the Marco Madsen side at plus 190. Why? I think Marco Madsen is in a position where he's got to go right now. He's 38 years old. He's not a normal 38-year-old. He is an Olympic level athlete. We don't get a lot of those in the UFC. Think of it, Yoel Romero. Why was he in title fights in his late 30s and early 40s? It's because he was an exceptional athlete. He was an exceptional athlete compared to the UFC level, right? Olympic credentials. Cuban, looks like a Greek god. The same can be said in many ways for Mark O, the Olympian Madsen. I mean, this guy is built of stone. He's a big lightweight, not by frame, but just by strength and by his muscle definition. You could tell most lightweights don't have that same kind of strength to them. Then you see Grant Dawson, right? Who's a big guy, and he's a strong guy, and he's a talented guy. But I think he has a little bit of trouble putting it all together. I think that missing weight, very unprofessional look here. They asked to move this fight back an extra week to give him more time to cut weight. He said, okay. And then he still missed weight. So it's just like, it was a little bit brutal there. Want to give him the benefit of the doubt. It was a bit on short notice, but I have a feeling that Grant Dawson, who's a former featherweight, he might eventually have to move up to that welterweight class. It seems like the guy cuts a ton of weight. Seems like he likes to go out there and be bigger than guys. I think the UFC was very strategic in their matchmaking with Jerry Gordon, former featherweight. So they put together two guys who were former featherweights, and Grant Dawson was able to get the better of him there. I was a little bit surprised that he was able to come on so hard in round 3. Is he going to be able to do that on short notice in this spot? That I'm not sure about. Marco Madsen, the question mark is his cardio. The guy is built like a fire hydrant. So he's not necessarily built for 25 minutes, but I do think that for 15 minutes, he could grit out a fight here if he needs to. I think that if he needs to get on top, he can find some takedowns here. I think people will be surprised. This guy, Marco Madsen, is strong where Dawson is strong. Dawson likes to get that body lock. James Krause talks about this, his former coach. He said, man, Grant is really strong from that body lock. If he's able to get that body lock, he's going to be able to get on top. You're going to be able to body lock a Greco-Roman Olympian? God bless your heart. It's going to be very, very tough. It's not impossible because this is MMA, and you can mix up the striking. You can get people guessing. You can get them out of stance and out of position. But why Greco-Roman has translated for guys like Matt Lindland and other fighters in the past is because you have a more natural stance for MMA. It's upright. You look at freestyle wrestlers, they're touching the mat. They're down with a very, very bent posture. It looks totally different than Greco-Roman up here, chest out, looking for underhooks. it's just a different style of wrestling. It does position you a little bit better for MMA. And I think that we've seen some impressive things from Mark Madsen regionally. The guy throws big power shots. He can hurt people. He can drop them. He didn't fight a lot of great guys. I will concede. He fought a lot of bums. But in the UFC, he's shown he could still keep guys honest with his power. He has good wrestling negation, right? Guys like Clay Guida, what do they want to do? Spam wrestling volume, takedowns. And Clay Guida wasn't really able to get much going there in that fight against Marco Madsen. That told me something as well. I think that Marco Madsen is an impressive fighter. I think that he's the more prepared guy for this contest today. You run this fight back in 2 years, maybe we get a different outcome. I would be pretty confident that Grant Dawson is going to continue on this upward trajectory, but I have a bad feeling for him in this fight. Best bet I ever made that didn't cash, Ricky Glenn plus 400 against Grant Dawson. They called me crazy then, and I said, he kind of gasses out though, and he's not that dynamic a finisher. So if he doesn't get the finish, I'm not sure that he's going to get the win. In this fight, I think to wrestle somebody who's that strong, to try and get on top of somebody like that, if it works, he's going to look like a genius. He's going to win big time. He might dominate. He might pass the guard, right? I don't know that Marco Madsen's going to be extremely competent from his back. But if Marco Madsen's the guy getting on top, I think Grant Dawson's going to fatigue very badly. I think he is going to be very uncomfortable in this fight, and I think he could very well get finished. You see the Marco Madsen finish on the regional scene, the last one he got before he came to the UFC. He takes the guy in his arms. He locks up the guillotine. He spins the guy in the air like this and just throws his limp body when he goes to sleep. Marco Madsen is insanely strong, and if Grant Dawson gets hurt, gets tired, starts taking bad shots, he easily could get submitted here, and he could get TKO'd by the power of Mark Madsen. It could be a greasy decision, but all those things point me to that plus 190 tag on Marco Madsen, and haven't bet it yet, but boy, oh boy, that one's calling my name, folks. I might just get there before fight time. Next up, we've got a very interesting matchup. A lot of line movement on this one as well. You see Tagir Ulanbekov opened up at a minus 180 favorite. He's now trending towards a minus 250 favorite. And I actually think it's justified here. And let me tell you why. I love Nate Maness. Don't get me wrong at all. Kentucky tough Nate Maness, you got to be kidding me. I think the guy's a stud. I think he's fun as hell. I think he's a great fighter. I hate this career decision to move down to 125 pounds, truthfully. The Megamind memes and stuff, I'm not really one to do that. I've cut weight before. Cutting weight sucks. Nothing funny about it, really. And I just feel like he's torturing himself, man. He looks completely emaciated. He did not look very happy, in my opinion, in the lead up to this fight because it sucks. To not eat, to not sleep very well because you're hungry, to not drink water when you're thirsty, it wears on you psychologically. And I think that Nate is so tough, man. I just don't know if he's going to have it. I don't know if he's going to have the gas. I don't know if he's going to have the juice. I don't know if he's going to have the firepower. You look at him historically. Again, I'm telling you, I love this guy. He's gotten some finishes, so it's skewed the data. But the guy's never landed more than 30 strikes in a UFC fight. Come on. That's not good. We can slice that any which way but loose. He has never landed more than 33 significant strikes in a UFC fight. Problem. Then we look at how's his takedown defense. Suspect. He can defend takedowns at times. He could do well if you're up against the fence. Open space, he was getting taken down like it was no big deal in his most recent fight. Don't like that. Tagir, very good body lock takedowns. Looked to be the bigger guy at the face-offs, despite the fact that Nate cut all this weight. That's a problem. Tagir only shows one knockout on his record. Yet what is happening during fight week? Trickle, trickle, trickle down goes the KO line. Why? Because this guy cut all this weight. It reminds me of one of the worst bets. I talked about a great bet I made that didn't cash on Ricky Glenn, ends up with a draw. How about this? One of the worst bets I ever made was on Kevin Kroom. He cut a lot of weight. He went down from 145 to 135. First punch of the night, the dude's looking up at the lights. That's what can happen when you cut a lot of weight, when you dehydrate, yourself. It's a problem. It's not good for your brain. It's not good for your stamina. It's not good for your cardio. So I think that Tagir Ulanbekov is very live to finish this fight. And he's not a historical finisher. But I don't trust Nate Maness in this contest. I don't trust how he's going to come in. He was another guy who cut weight with the UFC PI God bless him. Shout out. He actually did the work. He came in. He made the weight class here. I don't think that's good for him, man. I would have rather he missed weight. If he missed weight, I might have thought about betting him. But I don't think this is going to be a good spot for him. I think he could gas out badly. I think he could get hurt, compromised. I think his chance of injury is actually much higher because of how much he emaciated himself to make this weight class. So, God bless Kentucky Tough Nate Maness, but I had to fade him here with Taguiro on Bekoff. I bet him inside the distance. I bet him by knockout. I think that those are some ways to play him here if you're not looking to lay the significant chalk price, which has only continued to run in that one direction. Sharp guys I know like Nate Maness because he's a tough guy, because he's durable, because he brings the fire. I just don't know if he's going to have it here at this new weight class. And for me, it's a until proven otherwise, I don't think he does. Next up, guys, sloppy heavyweight fight. Very sloppy. I need a sip of coffee for this one. My word. We've got, according to my good friends at Oddsjam, we've got Josh Parisian, best available line on Pinnacle Sportsbook, plus 127. Best price on Chase Sherman, the favorite, looking like a minus 134. And that price is being brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. So this is a sloppy fight. Both these guys are arguably sub UFC level. But you got to give Chase Sherman the credit that he's fought a lot of tough guys in the UFC. He just hasn't looked very good. I think that he slows down in a lot of his fights. I think that he is liable to be finished in some of his fights. But I do think the last fight showed a little bit of promise. He was able to outlast his opponent. He was able to land the big shots late and put him away. But it turns into a sloppy brawl every time with this guy. And the fight that I can't get out of my mind, and the reason I will never again, and trust me when I say never, ever, ever, all right, maybe, but still, I don't want to ever bet Chase Sherman ever again because he lost to Jake Collier in embarrassing fashion. One takedown, the fight's over shortly thereafter against Jake Collier. Come on, dog. That's a fireable offense in my opinion. But in this fight, Josh Parisian, he's not exceptional at anything, but he doesn't need to be. Chase Sherman kind of does it to himself sometimes. Josh Parisian, what he did in his last fight surprised me. I bet Alain Badeau, another one of the worst bets I've ever made. I bet Alain Badeau because I thought he was the better striker, and I thought he was going to easily dance around this guy and land any shot that he wanted to because Josh Parisian has no defense. And he did just that. And he rocked Josh Parisian. But then by the end of the first round, Josh Parisian nearly TKOs him by getting back on top and humping his face. I don't even actually, almost TKOing him is more of an optics and where the referee was positioned. The guy basically didn't land a single strike in that exchange. He threw about 50 punches and landed about 4 of them. But either way, Josh Parisian then went on to win the fight. He outlasted him. He got on top and he won the fight. I think that he could do the same thing here. What's to stop him from doing that? I'm not sure. But am I going to trust either one of these guys with my hard-earned American dollars? I don't think I could do that either. I think that both these guys are pretty sloppy, pretty bad. I think a lot of sharp people have been touting the over 1.5 here. I don't hate that at all. I think that shout out to my man, Andrew Gombas. I did hear that on the Sharp Side video that he did today. And I think that makes some sense. Neither one of these guys is a very potent finisher. I will say, though, to Sherman's credit, when he's gotten off on his shots, when he's been successful, he has landed some first-round knockouts. We have seen, Josh Parisian get folded up before. He does tend to take a lot of damage, but he's gotten hurt badly in round 1 before. So I would not be stunned if if Chase Sherman got it done in the first round, but I really, really can't bank on that. So for me, this is just going to be a complete pass fight. I can't believe it's positioned this high on the card. There are so many better fights that we've already discussed. But shout out to the chat. We've got a lot of great people in here. Bub Collins, Liam, we've missed you. God bless you, my brother. I was here last week, but I was so late. And we're back on regular schedule. We've got great UFC cards coming up. The UFC has been really making it difficult to get fired up about some of these cards in terms of a presentation standpoint when there's just not a lot of substance, not a lot of meat on the bone. I think they did a better job today sprinkling some interesting fights throughout the card. And I think next week we're in for a treat. UFC 282 is the true card of the year. As far as I'm concerned, looks like a lot of great fights on paper as well. So great action. We'll be closing out the year of our Lord 2022. The co-main event, Neil Magny, Daniel Rodriguez. This is a fight I've gone back and forth on all week, guys. Early thoughts. Daniel Rodriguez has to be the side here. He's the more dangerous guy. He's got bigger power. He's got some submission acumen that people don't really give him a lot of credit for. He was able to submit Tim Means in his UFC run so far. But the deeper I looked into this fight, guys, one thing that stood out to me is you've got Daniel Rodriguez. He was the beneficiary, a lot of people would say, of some favorable decision, some favorable judging in his last contest against the Leech. And, I would tend to agree. I thought that the Leech won that fight watching live. On rewatch, it's a very close fight. Could have went either way. Pretty tepid pace from both guys. Neither one of them really went for it there. But D-Rod, took some big shots there. He said that the Leech hit him very hard. He got rocked a couple times by the Leech, by his own admission. And he's taken this fight on a pretty quick turnaround here. Neil didn't really take a lot of damage, almost any damage against Shavkat. If you listen to this show, if you've been watching for a long time, we call him Shavkat Lakhmanov. And he got the finish by sub there, plus 420, touted it as a must-have max bet. And there it was. I thought that was an easy pick. I did bet a small amount on D-Rod by sub because Neil Magny's never met a choke he wanted to defend. The guy's been guillotined by Neto BJJ in a submission grappling contest recently. Neil Magny has not lost 2 straight contests since 2014, I believe. The guy's been in the UFC for a very long time. The last time he lost back-to-back was Seth Baczynski and somebody else. So it's been a very long time. Neil Magny's always shown improvement. He's always shown a willingness to get in there with tough guys, but submissions have been his kryptonite. Then I hear Daniel Rodriguez in his interviews like, I just want to go in there and throw hands. I just want to, knock this guy out and finish him. And I'm like, that's what everybody says about Neil Magny. But then Neil Magny forces them into this, like he's got a magical power. He forces people to clinch him. And he's really long and awkward in the clinch and good at like draping over guys and holding on to him and making it greasy. And I thought he lost cleanly to Max Griffin. I was there in person. I watched UFC Columbus. I had a bet on Max Griffin. So I watched through my green colored glasses. I thought that, Max Payne did enough there to get the win. Wasn't to be. Got my money back and then some with our boy Shavkat Lakhmanov. But, my eagerness to fade Neil Magny was somewhat tempered when I heard that, D-Rod had MRSA on his elbow. That's why he delayed this fight for a couple weeks. I don't know if you guys have ever dealt with it. I've had MRSA before. I got MRSA when I was in college wrestling, and I hate to tell you guys, it's no fun. You got to get on serious antibiotics. I was basically told, like, don't wait till tomorrow. Go to the emergency room right now today because you don't want this to spread or you could get your leg amputated. So it's a big, serious thing if you get MRSA. It's staph that's resistant to medicine. So they have to, I don't want to be graphic or disgusting. So I'll leave it at that. But it's like, that's not good to be dealing with 6 weeks before a fight. I'll tell you, I wouldn't have wanted to rush back in there to a competition, after having MRSA. And he had it on his elbow. This is a boxer. This is a puncher. He's got MRSA on his elbow. He probably had to let that recover. He probably couldn't, box and throw elbows at the bag and certain things in the lead up to this fight that could slow his timing, that could make him a little more awkward. He got rocked in his last fight. Neil Magny's not historically a power puncher, but he's going to have a huge reach advantage here. You'd have to presume he's going to land a lot of jabs and crosses. Like D-Rod's defense isn't perfect. So all that leads me to think, like, if you're having fights with Dwight Grant where you almost get knocked out, if you're having decisions with Nicholas Dalby that are within a 50-50 margin, I can't say that you're head and shoulders above Neil Magny. That just feels like a fight that's kind of even. You got 2 guys around the same age. I think Neil's got a lot more wear on him, and I do think the guy who's more likely to land a knockout blow is Daniel Rodriguez. But I just don't know if I could rely on him to finish here. So reluctantly and sickeningly, my prediction is a gross Neil Magny split decision incoming once again. But, you know, if D-Rod's able to get it done, I hope he cashes my submission ticket at plus 1,700. I felt like that was a little wide, again, for a guy who just loves to get submitted. Very tough, very durable, does not easily get knocked out, but he's been submitted on a number of occasions. And checking over with our friends at Oddsjam, we've got minus 115 for Neil Magny. Best available price on Caesars Sportsbook. Plus 104 is what we're looking back on the comeback for Daniel Rodriguez. So if you guys like the underdog there, you're getting plus money on Daniel Rodriguez at this point. And if you like Neil Magny, you can get him for a very short favorite on Caesars Sportsbook at minus 115. A lot of other books holding that minus 120, minus 125, even as high as minus 130 in some places. So guys, that brings us to the main event of the evening. We got 96 people rocking with us live. Going to be under an hour today. So quick and spiffy on the timing for today's show. Just wanted to say really quickly a thank you to the sponsors of this show that make it possible. Guys, PrizePicks, it's the simplest game in all of DFS. If you're looking to get involved and have a little fun, put together a couple projections, you think you're smarter than the guys over at PrizePicks, you use my promo code Liam. They'll deposit match you 100% up to $100. Meaning if you go and deposit $20, they'll match you $40. If you go and deposit $50, they'll match you $50. You have 100 to play with. So this is the way that it works, guys. It's an easy way to support the show. It's a fun way to get involved. So if you're looking to play against their projections, simplest game in DFS, use the information in the description box below and visit my friends at PrizePicks. The other way that you can help out the show, Oddsjam. They help make this show possible. They help support the show, and they make a really simple tool where you can look at the odds and find, is there a better way? Is there a better place to place this bet? You know, there can be great variety on sportsbooks on what they're charging on a given prop, on what they're charging on a given money line, where you could get plus 200 at one house, you could get plus 175 at another. You're giving away 25 cents worth of equity on every dollar bet if you don't shop around for the best line. So that's the way that I view sports betting. I'm trying to invest my money in a smart way. And if I can get a price of plus 500 when plus 300 is the available price everywhere else, I want the plus 500. It's a no doubt. So that's the way that I operate. And I appreciate you guys. I appreciate the sponsors of this show for making it possible. But with that being said, with that out of the way, we have a hell of a main event to break down. And I'm coming in against the community, guys. I've done it before. I'm doing it again. I hate to say, everybody seems to be coalescing around Marina Rodriguez this week. And I get it. You know, she seems like the title contender in waiting. I've faded Amanda Lemos before. You know, I've tried to put some money against this girl. I made a lot of money with Jessica Andrade fading this girl because I bet Jessica Andrade by submission plus 600. If you guys watch the show, that you might remember that one as well. But Jessica Andrade, UFC champion, right? At multiple weight classes, she's been competitive, you know, with the elite of the elite. And now you look at Jessica Andrade, what she's going to bring to the table. You know, she's going to bring that insane explosive power. That's what Lemos brings. And she brought that physicality. She's the smaller party, so she was able to get into that nifty little standing arm triangle and put an insane squeeze on her. I don't think Lemos ever expected her to come out grappling. So she got, you know, surprised, and she got finished in her first main event. I think the UFC likes Amanda Lemos. Look at who they've match made her with in the past. You know, they've given her softball, and they've given her manageable tasks. Angela Hill, very tough, very credible, very experienced. She almost knocked her out in the first round with a front kick to the face. Wasn't able to close out the show. Ends up being a close enough decision. They give her the nod. They want to push her forward in this division. Then you see Michelle Waterson. You know, guys, I thought Michelle Waterson was fighting with her back up against the wall for her career. And so I said to myself, Michelle Waterson could win this fight. She's a plus 300 underdog. She could win it by submission. I had everything right. I had it all flipped. It was Amanda Lemos who goes out there and absolutely steamrolls her, was the better fighter in all positions, and she gets the submission finish. She shows that she's making some improvements to her craft on the ground. She talked about in her interviews in the lead up to this fight, I've been working on my grappling. I've been closing the gap there. I've been improving my submission skills. You look at somebody like Mackenzie Dern. She is about skill. She is about craft. She's about finesse. She's about the perfect sub. She's about locking up everything, moving one step at a time. because that's what jiu-jitsu competition is like. You don't want to make a mistake. You don't want to leave a gap. You don't want to rush. You want to find the right opportunity, the right attack, secure it, and then go. This is not, the same frenetic pace as you have in a mixed martial arts contest where you have 5 minutes maximum to work. So 5-minute maximum to work, what is more beneficial? If you could put a squeeze on somebody that puts doubt in their mind, if you could really hurt them with a choke, if you could really put them out. Emily Whitmire had her chin tucked. It looked like she was in a good position to defend the choke from Amanda Lemos. And Amanda Lemos is so strong that she squeezed like this on her chin, on her face like this, locked it up, and she went to sleep, arms stiff out like this. That's insane grip strength. If you guys have ever grappled, you know what I'm talking about. Hitting a no hooks rear naked choke is hard enough. Hitting it from the wrong side of the body, no hooks rear naked choke on the chin and squeezing somebody unconscious is a shocking level of power. Then you look at the fact that she goes out there, she has shown that improvement. She's shown that consistent improvement over time and a willingness to improve her grappling. She's already a powerhouse on the feet. She already has devastating knockout power. And now she's showing she can be a submission threat. She can improve her grappling, and she's committed to the game. You might think to yourself, Marina Rodriguez is the young up-and-coming prospect, and Amanda Lemos is, old hat. It's just not true. They're the same age. Both these women are the same age. And I think that if you look at their overall marketability, Amanda Lemos likes to dance. She likes to knock women out. She likes to get submissions. She likes to be fiery in there. And I think that she's very marketable for that reason. Marina Rodriguez, on the other hand, I think that she has some marketability, but a lot of her fights have been contentious split decisions. She's had more than one fight end in draw. So I think that that's, not a good sign. She's 6-1-2 in the UFC. And the fights that went to a draw, I mean, she got summarily out-grappled for a portion of that fight by Cynthia Calvillo, who can't buy a win right now in the UFC, right? It's like, for me, there's been these things that have shown gaps, have shown problems for the Marina Rodriguez side. I thought she could have lost that split decision to Yan Xiaonan, frankly. I thought that people were way too low on Yan Xiaonan coming out of that contest compared to how high they were on Marina Rodriguez, when I felt like Marina showed some flaws in that fight. She showed that she's not, head and shoulders above the division on the feet, which is where she needs to be. So I think that in this fight, where is her skills? Where is her advantage? Where is her path? Marina Rodriguez has beautiful knees. She's got good elbows. She's got linear punches. She is a technical striker. She's got good Muay Thai. She's got a background in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. She instructs Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes. She's not a complete slouch on the ground by any means. She survived Mackenzie Dern. She survived Cynthia Calvillo being in a dominant position. But Amanda Lemos is a different level of physicality than all those girls. She's a former 135er. She is very, very strong. She brings a lot of physicality to the table. She's a former PED user. Wink, wink. I think that Amanda Lemos has a lot of potential advantages in this fight, and I don't think people are giving her credit and respect. So I think Amanda Lemos is the side here at plus 200 in a fight that I expect to be a lot closer to 50-50. I think that if you're looking for the smartest way to play it, I was talking to my man Thimble Fight Picks just a little while ago. Very smart guy, very sharp. And he talked about the fact that if she wins round one, if she wins round two, you might be able to enter an arbitrage position, a hedge out on a nice plus money number on Marina Rodriguez if she drops that first round or two. And she has the better cardio of the two ladies. When I put advantages on paper, I think she is the better clinch striker in a pure sense. I think she's got better knees from the clinch. I think she's a better straight puncher, and I think she has a better cardio. I don't think she has any other advantages in this fight. And somebody can correct me in the comments if they think I'm wrong about that. But those are the three advantages I see for Marina Rodriguez. I see Amanda Lemos being the more powerful striker. I see her being the faster starter. I see her having more takedown upside. I see her having more submission grappling upside. I'm left in a position where I have to take the underdog or pass on the fight. And so for me, it's going to be a bet on the Amanda Lemos side. And, I wish everybody the best with how they're targeting it. I think this should be a hell of a fight. I think either lady could get the finish. If Amanda Lemos does not get the finish herself, she will spend herself in pursuit of a finish, and she could get easily finished in round 3, in round 4, in round 5 by knockout in this spot. But I just have a feeling that Marina Rodriguez is going to get overwhelmed here. I don't think that she wanted this fight. I think she wanted to move on in the division. I think she's been trying to pick her fights very carefully on this lead up. And I think that the UFC is getting a little sick and tired of that. I think they're giving her Amanda Lemos because they think Lemos can put her in danger, can give her a very tough fight, and can make her earn this title shot if that's what she's going to get. So I think it's going to be a hell of a scrap, but I think either one of these ladies could be primed for a future title shot. And I think that Amanda Lemos is ready right now. I think she's the more physical athlete, and I think she's going to get the finish. So give me Amanda Lemos inside the distance as my final prediction of the night. Guys, I am going to go live until 12:30. It is 12:19 p.m. in the East right now, and I want to open up the floor. Any questions you guys have? It could be about this card. It could be about UFC 281 coming up. It could be about UFC 282. It could be about any of the research I do, any of the services I use, any questions that you guys have for me that you would like answered. I'm going to open up the floor for about 10 minutes here and give you guys a chance to ask any questions that you have. Truly appreciate you guys for being here. Sharpest chat in the game. I say it each and every week. It is true. Once again, just going to peek through some of the comments that we had that I didn't get to see. WW says Parisian season, LFG champ 2024. God bless your heart, brother. I don't know that that's going to happen, but I'm rooting for you as always. David Dean says UFC loves Lemos. Her manager Walid runs the biggest promotion in Brazil, Jungle Fight. Friend of UFC for Brazilian fighters. Yes. And he also likely provides them with the best supplementation that money can buy. God bless America. Please don't sue me, guys. I'm just talking here, not making any accusations. Now, Lemos jet lag as a thought. Shower time with Steve. That's a great question, brother. I just don't believe that that's going to be a huge factor here. I think that Rodriguez also came from Brazil. I'd have to double check that. I think she got here a little bit earlier, but a couple of these Brazilian fighters are coming in with jet lag. I remember there was a big narrative about Darren Till jet lag when he came into the fight with Kelvin Gastelum. You guys might remember he did the very quick turnaround there, had to cut weight, in like the 24 hours between getting off the flight and the weigh-ins. He looked fine. He looked absolutely fine over the course of 15 minutes there. It was a winnable fight anyway, but it did go to show me at least that sometimes people buy into those narratives. Sometimes, those narratives get shopped around and we just don't see them manifest in the octagon. It's a possibility, right? So it's part of the variance that you're betting into. But I truly think that this is the kind of fight that Lemos can win. And I think the jet lag will be a small factor, if any factor at all. I don't have any Dana White food insights. I think, what was he eating? I think he had pumpkin chili. I forget. He's had a couple interesting things the last couple of days. He said I think he had a burger pizza, and he said it's the most delicious thing. He took 2 bites of it, so bless his heart there. I think coming up, guys, the reason I've been talking about this UFC 281 card is I think that there's a lot of potential interesting betting angles, but it's also just a fight fan's dream. So as I wait for a couple questions to continue to pile in, I'll just quickly run through some of the fights that are on the card here. Looking right now from top to bottom, we've got Israel Adesanya taking on Alex Pereira, middleweight championship on the line, strawweight title. So this fight has big implications, this strawweight main event tonight, because we're looking at a strawweight title fight taking place next week. You always love when a top contender and the champion emerge in close proximity. And I think that, thinking about how this could play out for the UFC, right? Let's say Zhang Weili wins the fight, which she's favored to do against Carla Esparza. Do they want Zhang Weili against Marina Rodriguez? I mean, maybe. That seems like a fight that you could at least market. Do they want, to have her take on Zhang Weili I'm talking about? Do they want her to take on Amanda Lemos? I'm not sure. But what if they want her to take on a rematch with Jessica Andrade? If Amanda Lemos gets the win tonight, Jessica Andrade already has a win over Lemos. She easily slides in to a top contendership spot at 115 pounds, as she's done before. And Jessica Andrade basically fell on a grenade for the UFC. If you guys remember, where they're like, hey, you want to turn this around a month later in China? And she's like, okay, thanks for the title shot. I'll go defend it a month later in China. I think they might do her a solid, do her a favor. If Lemos is able to get the win, would not be surprised if Jessica Andrade is able to sneak in there and get the title shot. I'm going to sneeze real quick and put my, nope, we're good. It went away. So we've got Odds Smoker MMA. I love the show. What's your favorite pick or prop for today's card? Truly appreciate you being here, my friend. I'd have to say, in terms of my favorite prop on the card, probably has to be Tagiru on Bekoff inside the distance. I just think that Nate's going to have a hard time keeping that pace for 25 minutes, as emaciated as he looked. And Tagir, not known for being a big finisher at all, which is why I think we're getting this nice plus money number. I think that he also, was cheated a little bit by Tim Elliott in his last fight. So he's going to be out here looking for revenge, man. And Nate Maness was just solved by this team. I think that there's a chance Tagir could solve him once again and potentially with a little bit more of an emphatic finish. So I like Tagir to get this done inside the distance. That would be my favorite pick or prop for today. I appreciate you asking. David Dean says Magny sub plus 1,200. I actually don't think that D-Rod's a slouch on the ground. I really don't. I think he's a tough guy on the ground. I don't think he's easy to submit at all. I think he'd be very tough to finish. But in fact, I would actually lean more towards a D-Rod sub than a Magny sub in this spot. I think Magny more likely to land a knockout than to get the sub in this spot, just because D-Rod was hurt in his last fight, and both these guys are a little bit older. The welterweight division tends towards a little bit more action, a little bit more violence, a little bit more knockdown. So would not be surprised if either one of those guys went down. But ultimately, I think that we will see the fight go over. And Joe Maitas asks a question in the chat here. The way you look at fights is brilliant. I appreciate you, brother. I'm just a guy like everybody else. Been doing this long enough now that I do a little bit better at picking fights than I did when I started. You often end up where I end up. My question is, where do you start? I begin with lines and line moves. I incorporate narrative. I think that's what you got to do. I look at the matchups. I look at the market, and I try and combine those together. And what I come away with is a picture of the fight. Let me see if I have my charger handy. It looks like the old laptop's going to die on me if I don't. Sorry, folks. Technical difficulties here. Just don't want to lose the stream on you, folks. Oh, we got it. All right, back to it. So to answer your question, man, I like to look first at my initial impression. So I'll normally write down my leans, who I think is going to win the fights based on the names. And then I will start to look into the lines, and I'll look at how they opened. I'll look at how they move. I'll look at where certain sportsbooks that I respect are holding lines versus sportsbooks I think are square and make bad decisions or are late to move their lines a lot of times. And that's kind of how I look at the process. I start with a holistic view. I like to look at the entire card. I think breaking down one matchup at a time is tough. I think breaking down how you think the card's going to play out. I look for potential busters. I look for potential false favorites. I look for potential underdogs with a path to victory that I think are clear. So that's the way I try and do it. And I also try not to get wedded to my initial impression. So I write down my initial leans, but if the data is telling me otherwise, maybe I change my mind, but maybe I go smaller, right? Like I try never to bet too hard against my own gut, but sometimes you got to trust the data. You got to trust the numbers. And I also look at how people have performed as bets in the past, how they've done. If you've bet on them in the past, have you made money? Have you, if you bet on the totals for their fights, have you made money? If you're not asking yourself these questions, you might fall into traps. And so that's what I do. I try and ask as many questions as possible and exploit value. I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing to take a risk. That's what I'm doing here ultimately. But I feel like my risk allocation is pretty solid week over week. And that's what I try and do is never let my highs get me too high. Never let my lows get me too low. Just stick to the same process week over week. So appreciate you guys for the great questions. Joe asked which books are sharp and which are square. I think you got to find some of that on your own. Here's what I'll share with you. I think Bet Online is a great book to look at. Why? They originate a lot of these numbers. They're the first to market on a lot of the numbers. So when they're taking bets, when they're moving, when they're opening lines, they're not trying to open it perfect every time. But when the limits go up, they're giving you a more clear indication of what they think the true line should be, because they have to, because they're taking bigger bets on either side. I would say sharp books are places where people aren't banned, right? So like DraftKings, if you do too well, they don't want you to play there anymore. If you make too much money, they limit how much you can bet, right? Circa has a flat limit. Anybody who goes into Circa can bet 5,000, can bet 10 grand, whatever the house limit is, whatever the posted limit. You could be sharp, you could be square, you could be a fish, you could be a whale, doesn't matter. They'll take your money. So that means you have to have sharper lines, right? Just on principle. If I'm taking more money, if I'm taking bigger bets, if I'm taking a bigger risk as the house, I got to have a little bit more sophistication with how I'm doing it. That's why they have Nick Kalikas as their heads odds maker. That's why they have really sophisticated risk management. That's what Circa and other sharp sports books do. I would look for places that take big limits, places that book a lot of UFC action, places that have prop markets that are sharp on UFC, and you could start to really get a holistic approach to the market. Because I think certain books, MGM, FanDuel, DraftKings, they're more likely to ban players. They're more likely to be copycats. They're more likely to have square numbers. That's what you have to think about. Bet online, more likely to have sharp numbers, bigger limits earlier on. These are the kind of things you have to think about. So I think there's ways to get value on all those sports books. You could beat sharp sports books too, but it takes a little bit more thought, a little bit more sophistication, and you want to see what they're doing. I think that sharp sports books often tell the story of a fight, whereas some square sports books, they don't know how to price these things. And if they don't get a big bet from a sharp player because they banned him 2 weeks ago, then they're not going to have the information to move the line. Whereas places that accept action from anybody, they're going to get hit on the sharp sides. You just have to think that way. So the sharps don't always win. I remember the sharps were huge on Ciryl Gane against Francis Ngannou. I stood against them that time. Sometimes the sharps eat and everybody else gets crushed, like Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev last week. So these are the things that happen, and you'll see it, right? Where sharp markets were the first to move Islam to a minus 200 plus favorite because they were taking big bets on Islam. Other markets were holding, great numbers on Islam up until fight time because their customer base was more interested in the Charles Oliveira side. So these are things you have to think about. The splits don't always tell the whole story, but they can be helpful. And I would always say, you want to consider why would I leave some piece of information on the table that I don't look at? I want to know everything. I want to know as much as I can about the fight and make my informed decision from there. So I hope that helps people in terms of, making more sophisticated decisions, making better bets over time. But I appreciate you guys bigly. Tim O says, why can't you live bet at Circa? Kalikas tweets the live odds. I don't know. I have not been to Circa in Las Vegas, and I know that they have a Colorado operation as well. I'm not sure to what extent they have live betting or don't have live betting. I'm not sure if that's a Las Vegas only operation or if that's a Colorado only operation, for example. So that would be something to look into there. They probably are offering live odds somewhere if Kalikas is tweeting them, but I can't attest to where they would be personally because Circa is not in my jurisdiction. Shout out to my man, Brian. He tracks all the cappers bets. You should definitely follow him. Very invaluable resource. And he said, I 100% knew you were going to be on Lemos this week. I am jumping on the train with you, my friend. Let's effing go. I'll tell you this, guys. I can't ever guarantee a win. I can't ever guarantee that the bet is sharp. I lose, I win. I'm no better than anybody else. But what I will say is one of the angles I've had success with this year is targeting undervalued women's MMA underdogs in the main event. And it happened with Ketlin Vieira, and people were out for blood. It happened with Carlos Esparza, and people were out for blood. Maybe Amanda Lemos wins the grossest split decision of all time here, and people will be out for blood again. What I'll tell you is this, man. When you see a fight where the finisher, the more dynamic threat, the violent party is a big plus money underdog, it at least should pique your attention. Maybe you don't get there every time. And in this case, I understand 100%. ABCs say always bet on cardio. If you're betting on the cardio of Marina Rodriguez being superior, I mean, what could I possibly say to dispute you? I can't say anything. But what I can say is I'm betting on the upside. I'm betting on the potential. I'm betting on the finishing equity. I'm betting on the danger factor. That's what I'm betting on. So I'm not going in there, not acknowledging the cardio threat from the other side. Most of the time, I like to bet on cardio. But if I'm betting on cardio, I needed to check all the other boxes at 70%. At 70+%, which is what we're being asked to pay on Marina Rodriguez, 70% indication implied by the odds. That's her implied win probability. Does she win this fight 7 out of 10 times and she doesn't get, a knockout finish? I'm not sure. Does she win the first 3 rounds here? I'm not sure. I think that great point from my man 2 cents. Marina was eating a lot of right hands against Michelle. Can't do that against Lemos. That's a fact. That's a fact. Amanda Lemos diddy bops people with the right hand. Go back and watch. I think that people could be surprised here by the power. And, I heard Din Thomas do a breakdown in this fight as well. I loved what Din Thomas had to say, which was that, yeah, she could mix in the takedown. She could look for that. But I think her best chance is to land a knockdown, to drop her with those big power shots that she's throwing. And Marina likes to throw combinations. She likes to get in there and land. I think she's going to be there to be hit. I think she could get dropped. This could be a club and sub, take your lunch money kind of deal. So, I think that this is a lot more complex and interesting a fight than people were giving it credit for. I hear Pinnacle is sharp with higher limits, says Jay. 5 dimes best overall for MMA betting, in my opinion. 5 dimes, sharp book. Pinnacle, sharp book. Bet Online, sharp book. Circa, sharp book. The other ones, I'll let you guys discover for yourself, but at least 2 more that I could think of that help inform my opinion of what the sharp books are taking on any given line. Bet Chris, as well as another one I'll share with you guys, because they're just taking big limits. They're taking a lot of bets. They have huge markets, and they normally have a smaller VIG. So they might offer the best odds on both sides, and that could be telling as well, because you see where they're booking the VIG in the market. You see what side they're loading up all the VIG on, and I think that that's important. Shout out Chris London, says, love the shirt, checking in from NorCal. You'll love my man, Blake MMA 170 on Instagram even more. Absolute tough guy. You go back and look. If you guys remember the video of the guy whose nose was completely sideways and he was getting up talking to the doctor, trying to tell him why he should be able to fight still, that is my man, Blake Perry, one of the toughest individuals I know. Jacket tough mentality. And it was his birthday over the last couple of days. So just wanted to shout out my man, Blake, wear his shirt in his honor. And I think he's an absolute stud. So you guys will do yourself a service to follow the career of Blake Perry and go watch his fight against Makoa Cooper. One of the fights of the year, truthfully, and one of the comebacks of the year. Absolutely insane fight. I think you guys will have a great time watching it. That being said, guys, we've gone a little bit over time. 100 people still rocking live in the chat, so I will answer any questions you guys have for the next 4 minutes, but 12:40 is the hard out here. I've had an absolute pleasure of a time talking these fights with you guys. I think that we're in for a treat. I got a lot of bets on this card. I think that there are some betting opportunities. I think a lot of the value, the equity has been eaten out of some of these odds, but there's still some places, some books hanging square numbers on some of these propositions, especially. And I think that could be worth taking. Just in terms of the Amanda Lemos side here, I'm seeing now she got bet down she got bet up to plus 200 at Bet Online. So yeah, I'm going to be getting involved at that number. I think that that's a fair price to play her as an underdog here. So they're going to be seeing my money on that one, folks. And just want to say shout out to each and every one of you guys for being here. God bless each and every one of you. I hope that you all enjoy the fights. Until next time, come back next week, UFC 281. We're going to be breaking it all down. We're going to be doing it earlier in the week. Last question of the day from my man, MMA Locker Room. Can I borrow $23 to put on the I Am Not Biased Liam parlay? I got you, Locker Room. Hit me off air, and we'll figure it out. But, guys, I truly appreciate it. Take care. Have a great rest of the day. Good luck on all your bets. And until next time, I'm Liam Picks Fights. Come back and we'll have a great time then. Take care.